You know, there is this very specific sound. It's this rhythmic chopping, this mechanical sound. And if you grew up in the 70s, the 80s, or, you know, honestly, even the 90s, because of all the reruns.
Yeah, absolutely, the reruns.
Right. That sound just triggers a complete Pavlovian response.
You're talking about the Bell H-13 Sub helicopter.
Exactly. You hear that rotor blade just cutting through the air. And you don't just think of aviation, you think of olive drab tents. You think of meatball surgery. You think of a very dry martini being made in a literal mess kit. We are talking, of course, about MASH.
A cultural monolith. I mean, I really don't think that word is too strong here.
No, not at all.
We are talking about a show whose finale drew something like 106 million viewers. It completely changed the landscape of television. But today, we aren't looking at the finale.
Right. We are doing something a bit different today for this deep dive.
We aren't looking at the show everyone remembers with the, you know, the mustache-wearing B.J. Honeycutt or the very patrician Charles Emerson Winchester III.
No, we are going all the way back to the messy, chaotic, and frankly, really surprising beginning. We are diving specifically into Season 1.
Yeah, the genesis of the 4077th Mobile Army Surgical Hospital.
Set during the Korean War, so the 1950 timeline, but filmed in the mountains of Malibu. And we're covering that initial broadcast period from 1972 to 1973.
Which is just a fascinating place to start, because Season 1 is, it's almost like a completely different show compared to what it became later on.
It really is.
It's like watching a band figuring out their sound in real time on stage.
Totally. And our mission today is really specific for you all listening. We aren't just here to recap episodes for the sake of nostalgia. We want to understand how a sitcom about war.
Which is an inherent paradox right there.
Exactly. It's a massive paradox. We want to see how it found its footing. So we have this huge stack of source material today. We've got production notes, the original Larry Gilbert scripts, and some deep critical analysis of those first 24 episodes.
It really is an excavation project.
We're going to look at the lost characters you probably forgot about, the evolution of the tone, and identify the exact moments where the show really found its legendary voice.
Because when you look at these first 24 episodes, you see the struggle, right? The struggle to balance high-concept slapstick comedy with the absolute grim reality of death.
Yeah.
And that balance, it definitely didn't happen overnight.
So let's jump in. We have to start with the people. Because when I think of MASH, I think of a very specific group of faces.
Of course. Yeah. You have the starting lineup, the iconic 6 that are listed in the opening credits right from the jump. You have Captain Benjamin Franklin Pierce, obviously better known as Hawkeye.
Played by Alda, the complete heart and soul of the show.
Right. And his partner in crime, Trapper John McIntyre, played by Wayne Rogers. Then there's the commander, Lieutenant Colonel Henry Blake. That's McLean Stevenson.
And the antagonists, I mean, if you can call them that, Major Margaret Houlihan, or Hot Lips.
Loretta Swit.
Yeah, Loretta Swit. And Major Frank Burns, Ferret Face, played by Larry Linville. And, of course, the company clerk, Corporal Radar O'Reilly,
played by Gary Burghoff, who, interestingly enough, was actually the only actor to play the same character in the original Robert Altman MASH movie and the TV series.
Really?
Yeah, everyone else was recast for television, but Gary Burghoff was just undeniably Radar.
That is a great piece of trivia. But here is the thing that really threw me while I was digging into these early sources. Watching these first few episodes, the swamp, you know, that's the tent where the surgeons live. It's crowded.
Oh, it is very crowded.
It's not just Hawkeye and Trapper bunking in there like we all remember.
No, it isn't. And this is what we might call the Mandela effect of Season 1.
Ah, right.
They're recurring characters here who are central to the plot. They're living in the swamp, scrubbing in for surgery, who just kind of
vanish.
Yeah, they vanish later on without much explanation at all.
Let's unpack these lost characters, because first up, we absolutely have to talk about Spearchucker Jones.
Right. Captain Oliver Harmon Jones, nicknamed Spearchucker. He is played by Timothy Brown.
And in the early episodes, he is a main character.
He is. He lives in the swamp with Hawkeye and Trapper. He's very much part of the inner circle.
And he's a neurosurgeon, right?
He is a neurosurgeon, which is a very high medical specialty to have there. He's playing poker. He's helping execute the pranks against Frank Burns.
Right.
He was actually in the original movie as well, though, played by Fred Williamson there. But in the show, he's a vital part of the team for the first half of the season.
So why does he just disappear? Because the sources indicate it wasn't an acting choice or a contract dispute. It was actually a historical accuracy choice.
That is the official line from the production notes, yeah.
Yeah.
The producers received information allegedly that there were no black surgeons serving in MASH units during the Korean War. So they wanted to remain historically authentic to that 1950s setting, so they simply wrote the character out.
Which is incredibly ironic because later research showed that there actually were black surgeons in Korea.
Exactly. It was a research error on the part of the producers that ended up costing us a really interesting dynamic in the swamp. It left the swamp very white for the rest of the series.
Yeah, it really did. But he's not the only one who vanished. We also have Ugly John.
The anesthesiologist. The guy with the hat.
Right, John Orchard played him. He's usually seen wearing that Australian slouch hat.
He is the anesthesiologist, so he's in the background of almost every single surgery scene in season 1. He's usually asking for more pentothal or making some dry, sarcastic comment.
He essentially functions as part of the furniture of the OR, but he gives the camp a sense of being this busy international place.
It makes the camp feel bigger, doesn't it? Like it's not just our main 6 characters doing every single job.
Precisely. And then there is Ho-John.
Ho-John is the swamp's houseboy. And, I mean, that term alone really dates the show.
Oh, it really does.
Ho-John is a local Korean young man who effectively works for Hawkeye and Trapper. But if you look at the pilot episode, which aired September 17th, 1972, the entire plot actually revolves around him.
Let's touch on that pilot for a second because it really sets the tone. It was written by Larry Gelbar.
Yes, and the plot is purely about Hawkeye and Trapper trying to raise tuition money to send Ho-John to Hawkeye's old college back in the States. They want to get him out of the war zone and give him an education.
Right, so they hold a camp-wide raffle to raise the cash. And the prize for this raffle, a weekend in Tokyo with Nurse Dish.
Lieutenant Dish.
Yeah.
Played by Karen Phillip. She's another one of these lost characters. In the pilot, in the first couple of episodes, she is a prominent focus. She's the incredibly attractive nurse who is essentially treated as the trophy of the camp.
Which, looking at it through a modern lens, is, well, it's a lot to take in.
It is problematic, to say the least. The idea of raffling off a date, which is heavily implied to be much more than just a date, with a female officer, is something the show would definitely move away from later.
For sure. But in the pilot, she is central to the plot. She helps with the schemes, she's part of the core group, and then, just like Spear Tucker and Ho-John, she just fades away as the writers decided to focus more tightly on the core chemistry of Hawkeye and Trapper.
It's wild to look back on. It feels like a much bigger ensemble cast in the beginning.
And speaking of cast and quirks, I noticed something really funny about Father Mulcahy in the pilot.
Ah, yes. The good father.
It's not William Christopher.
It is not. In the pilot, Father Mulcahy is played by an actor named George Morgan. He has this one single appearance, and he plays the character a bit more, I don't know, straight, a bit more nondescript.
And the producers felt it just wasn't quite clicking.
Yeah, the sources say they needed someone with a very specific kind of quirky innocence, sort of spiritual vulnerability. So by episode 3, which is titled Requiem for a Lightweight, George Morgan is out, and William Christopher is in.
And Christopher really brought that tentative, slightly confused, but deeply moral quality that made Mulcahy an absolute legend.
You really did. And then there's Klinger.
I always assumed Klinger was there from day one. I think most people do. But he actually shows up in episode 4, Chief Surgeon Who.
Correct. And his introduction is incredibly memorable. He's already trying to get his Section 8 discharge. General Barker is inspecting the camp, sees Klinger on guard duty.
And Klinger is wearing a dress.
He is wearing a dress.
And he's not just standing there looking embarrassed. He yells out, "Halt! Who goes there?" Like it's a completely normal military protocol.
Yes. And here is the kicker from the production notes. Jamie Farr was originally hired for just one single episode.
Really?
Yeah, the man in a dress trying to get a Section 8 was supposed to be a one-off visual gag.
No way!
But Farr played it with such utter conviction. He didn't play it like a caricature of a drag queen. He played it like a desperate soldier who found a weird loophole and was committing to it 100%.
And the producers realized they had struck gold.
Exactly. He became a recurring character and eventually, of course, a main cast member.
That visual of Klinger is just baked into pop culture history now. Before we move off the cast entirely, we have to mention the guest stars. Because season 1 had some heavy hitters before they were huge.
Oh, absolutely. We have Ron Howard.
Yeah.
And we will definitely talk more about him later because his episode is incredibly pivotal.
Yeah.
We also have Leslie Nielsen showing up.
And this is pre-Naked Gun Leslie Nielsen.
Yes, this is serious, dramatic actor Leslie Nielsen playing a colonel. And Ed Flanders, who would later star in St. Elsewhere, also appears.
It really shows that the casting directors had a real eye for talent even early on.
It does.
So we have this expanded cast, we have the setting established, but what about the vibe? Because reading through these early scripts, season 1 feels so much looser, much more chaotic than the later years.
It is. The tone is heavily focused on what we'd call hijinks and bureaucracy. It's really about satirizing authority. You have to remember the cultural context here. It's 1972. The Vietnam War is still raging.
Right.
MASH is set in Korea, technically, but it is speaking directly to an audience that is watching Vietnam on the nightly news.
So the army itself is kind of the villain.
The army is absolutely the antagonist. Bureaucracy is the enemy. Hawkeye and Trapper aren't just doctors. They're anarchists fighting the military machine with pranks.
Because they're trying to save lives despite the army, not because of it.
Precisely.
The episode To Market is a perfect example of this. This is episode 2.
A total classic. The plot is that black marketeers have essentially hijacked the camp's hydrocortisone supply, which is a serious medical crisis.
But the solution is pure farce. To get the supplies back, they have to trade something valuable to the black market. So what do they steal?
Henry Blake's antique oak desk.
Which is 100 years old. They sneak into the commander's office in the middle of the night. They disguise the desk as a patient on a gurney just to get it out of the compound.
And the visual payoff is absurd. Henry Blake is standing in his office, and suddenly a helicopter hook lowers down outside the window, grabs the desk, and airlifts it away, right while he's watching.
It's totally cartoonish. It's something you'd see in a Looney Tunes short.
It is, but it establishes that core principle. Hawkeye and Trapper will do anything to get what their patients need, even if it means robbing their commanding officer blind.
It sets the moral compass perfectly. People first, property second.
Exactly. And then there's the ring banger. This is the Leslie Nielsen episode we mentioned.
He plays Colonel Buzz Brayton, and the sources note a ring banger, or a ring knocker, refers to a West Point graduate who taps his class ring on the table to let everyone know he outranks them.
Yes, and this guy is a total menace. He has a high casualty record. He's obsessed with personal glory. He's literally getting men killed just to make himself look good in the reports.
So Hawkeye and Trapper decide they have to get rid of him, but they don't file a report because reports just get buried by the brats.
No, they decide to gaslight him.
They literally convince him he is going insane.
They do. They tell him Henry is an alcoholic who is having an affair with Hot Lips, which, to be fair, was a common rumor around camp anyway, but they really ramp it up.
Yeah.
They manipulate conversations so he hears things that aren't actually there. They move his tent around while he's sleeping, so he wakes up totally confused about where he is.
It's psychological warfare.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
They use the tools of psychiatry to completely dismantle a superior officer. It's funny, but also a little dark when you really think about it.
Right. They are driving a man to a nervous breakdown just to get him shipped out.
But again, the justification is that he's an active danger to the troops.
It really highlights that swamp dynamic. If you cross Hawkeye and Trapper, you aren't just going to get pranked. You are going to get destroyed.
True. Now, speaking of things that are a little dark, or perhaps dated is a better word, we have to talk about the sexual humor in season 1.
Yeah. This is where the source material points out some stuff that might make a modern viewer wince a bit. The gender politics are very much 1972.
We have a sociological study by James H. Whittables mentioned in our sources, and he heavily critiques the show's early treatment of women. The nurses are often treated as props or prizes.
Now, we aren't taking sides here, but looking at Whittables' analysis of the era, the episode The Moose really stands out.
Yes, The Moose. Episode 5. The title refers to a Japanese word adapted by GIs, musen meaning girl, but it was used to mean a servant or a mistress.
And the plot involves a Sergeant Baker who literally owns a Korean girl named Young-hae.
And the inciting incident is that Hawkeye wins her in a card game.
He wins a human being in a poker game.
Now, we have to look at the narrative intent. Hawkeye's intention is to free her. He wants to, as the script puts it, demussify her. They want to teach her to be independent, to not serve men.
But the premise itself, using a woman as currency to win her freedom, is startling today. And the comedy comes from her not understanding she's free, and she keeps continuing to try to serve Hawkeye.
Right, which plays into some very uncomfortable stereotypes. It's a sort of white savior narrative mixed with standard 70s sitcom tropes.
And Whittables points out another example in Requiem for a Lightweight. Trapper literally boxes a guy to keep a nurse, Margie Cutler, from being transferred.
Right. Nurse Cutler is transferred by Hot Lips because she's a quote-unquote distraction to the doctors.
Yes.
Not because she's bad at her job, but simply because she's too pretty.
So Trapper gets in the boxing ring to fight for her to stay, and they cheat.
They do. They use ether on the boxing gloves to knock the opponent out. Again, the goal of keeping a good nurse is framed as noble, but the method treats her entirely like a prize to be won in a gladiator match.
It's definitely a product of its time. Whittables also points out the handling of homosexuality in early episodes, like the ring banger and bananas, crackers and nuts.
Yes. In the ring banger, part of the gaslighting involves convincing the colonel that Frank Burns is gay and is secretly attracted to him.
Right. It's played purely for laughs, using homosexuality as a punchline or a tool for embarrassment.
It's really interesting to track that evolution because MASH is known as this incredibly progressive show later on.
Right, but in season 1, it was clearly still shedding the skin of the era it was made in.
Absolutely. It was reflecting the swinging 70s attitudes.
Okay.
But even amidst these rougher edges, you have these moments of absolute brilliance where the writing just shines through.
We're not to talk about Tuttle.
Oh, Tuttle. Episode 15. This is widely considered an all-time classic, isn't it?
It really is the absolute pinnacle of anti-bureaucracy comedy. If you want to understand what early MASH is about, you just watch Tuttle.
The premise is just chef's kiss. Hawkeye and Trapper invent a completely fake person.
Captain Jonathan S. Tuttle.
And it starts so small, they just want to donate some extra supplies to the local orphanage.
Right. The sister at the orphanage needs supplies. Hawkeye wants to give them to her, but he can't sign for them himself without getting in massive trouble. He needs a cover.
So he invents Captain Tuttle of the Audiovisual Squad.
But then the bureaucracy kicks in.
The Army needs paperwork. So to cover their tracks, they have to create a fake personnel file for Tuttle.
And then they realize if he's a captain, he gets paid.
Exactly. So they have to figure out how to collect his pay, which they then, of course, donate straight to the orphanage.
Get a snowball.
It spirals out of control beautifully. They create fake medical records. They get dog tags made.
Oh, and here's a detail I love from the sources. They get the dog tags from a Major Murdoch.
Right, who turns out to be another totally fake person invented by the camp dentist.
It's like the entire camp is just running on imaginary people.
And it gets to the point where General Clayton is so impressed by Tuttle's generosity, because he's supposedly donating his entire salary to orphans, that he wants to award Captain Tuttle a medal.
So now they have a massive problem. They can't exactly produce a fake man for a very real medal ceremony.
So they have to kill him.
Of course they do.
Hawkeye creates this incredibly heroic death scene narrative where Tuttle jumps from a chopper to save some drop supplies, but he forgets his parachute.
It's so absurd.
It is, but it highlights the sheer ridiculousness of the military paperwork machine. You can invent a hero purely out of paper. If the file says he exists, the Army believes he exists.
The sources draw a parallel to the Lieutenant Kijé story from Russian literature, a fictional soldier created by a clerical error who takes on a life of his own.
Yes, it's that exact same satirical concept.
And the cherry on top for Tuttle. I checked the closing credits of the episode. It lists Captain Tuttle as himself.
A perfect meta-joke. And we also see Sparky in this episode.
Oh, right. Radar's contact at headquarters. Usually we only hear Radar talking to him on the phone, but here he actually makes his only on-screen appearance. It's a rare treat for the fans.
So Tuttle is the peak of the comedy. It's the high-water mark for the hijinks. But then we get to episode 17.
Sometimes you hear the bullet.
This is the turning point, isn't it? This is where the show stops being just a sitcom and becomes something else entirely.
Absolutely. This is the moment the show shifts into a dramedy. It's the moment the laugh track essentially stops working.
The premise starts like a typical episode. Hawkeye's friend from back home, Tommy Gillis, comes to visit the camp. He's in the infantry, and he's writing a book.
And the book is titled, You Never Hear the Bullet.
Right. Tommy's a great character because he represents Hawkeye's life back home. Yeah. He's not a doctor. He's just a regular guy, a writer. He really grounds Hawkeye.
And running parallel to this is a subplot with Ron Howard.
A very young, post-Andy Griffith Ron Howard. He plays a Marine who comes in with appendicitis. Hawkeye treats him and realizes the kid is underage.
He's 15 years old. He used his brother's ID to enlist.
And Hawkeye is deeply conflicted. The kid wants to go back to the front line to kill commies and be a big hero. Hawkeye wants to send him home to his mom.
So you have these two threads. The old friend writing a book about death, and the young kid eager to go face it. And then the tone shifts violently.
Tommy Gillis goes out to the front and gets shot.
He comes back to the 4077th on a stretcher.
And Hawkeye is the surgeon working on him. He tries to save him. It's frantic. It's desperate. But he fails. Tommy dies on the table.
And his last words are referencing his book title. He tells Hawkeye that he actually heard the bullet.
That scene, seeing Hawkeye break down, it wasn't just a doctor losing a patient. It was a man losing his best friend.
And that leads to one of the most famous speeches in the entire series. Henry Blake finds Hawkeye crying in the scrub room.
And Henry, who we just talked about, is the guy getting his desk stolen, the buffoon. Henry drops the mask completely.
What does he say? It's in the notes here.
He says, rule number 1 is young men die. And rule number 2 is doctors can't change rule number 1.
Oof. Doctors can't change rule number 1. That hits so hard.
It's the first time a main character fails to save a friend. It completely shattered the sitcom illusion that our heroes always win. It showed that despite their skill, despite all the jokes and pranks, death still wins in the end.
And because of that profound grief, Hawkeye makes a huge decision about the Ron Howard character.
He turns him in. He reports the kid to the MPs. He sends him home.
And the kid is furious. He screams at Hawkeye, says he will hate him for the rest of his life.
And Hawkeye's reaction?
He just accepts it. He basically says he would rather be hated by a living boy than mourn another dead one.
It is a powerful, powerful anti-war message. It redefines Hawkeye from a prankster to a tragic hero.
It really defines who Hawkeye is at his core. He will sacrifice his own popularity to save a life. Which brings us to Hawkeye as a character. He's the hero, obviously, but Season 1 does a really good job of showing his flaws, too.
It does. He's arrogant. He's insubordinate. But he is undeniably brilliant. Episode 4, Chief Surgeon Who, establishes this dynamic perfectly.
This is the big power struggle episode.
Right. Frank Burns outranks Hawkeye. Frank is a major. Hawkeye is only a captain. Technically, by Army regulations, Frank should be chief surgeon. But Henry Blake appoints Hawkeye.
Because Hawkeye is the better doctor.
Exactly. Hawkeye is confident. Frank and Hot Lips are furious about this. They go over Henry's head and call General Barker to complain.
But when the general actually arrives...
He sees Hawkeye work. He sees him take command in the OR during a massive rush of casualties. And he realizes Henry made the right call.
It cements the idea that in this specific war, skill trumps rank. The hierarchy of the Army doesn't matter at all when a patient is bleeding out on the table.
But then you have Sticky Wicket, episode 21. This is crucial for balancing Hawkeye's massive ego, isn't it?
It is essential. In this episode, Hawkeye insults Frank terribly during surgery. He's acting like the literal god of the OR, mocking Frank's skills in front of everyone.
But then Hawkeye's patient doesn't recover well.
Right. The patient's vitals are failing. Hawkeye obsesses over it. He can't figure out what went wrong. He reflects, he agonizes over the charts. He really starts to doubt himself.
And eventually, he realizes he missed something.
A diagnosis.
He missed a tiny piece of shrapnel. But here's the kicker. Frank caught it.
Frank Burns actually showed up Hawkeye.
He did. Frank saw the thing the great Hawkeye Pierce missed. And Hawkeye has to eat a massive slice of humble pie. He has that rare moment where he turns to Frank and says, "Thanks, Frank."
I love that. It makes the rivalry so much more interesting.
It does. If Hawkeye is always right and Frank is always a total moron, it just becomes a cartoon. By showing that Hawkeye can fail and that Frank is actually a competent enough doctor to catch a mistake, it grounds the show in reality.
It reminds us that they're all just exhausted doctors trying to do an impossible job.
Precisely. And speaking of the whole group of exhausted people, we should talk about the Long John Flap.
Oh, this one is so fun.
It's written by Alda. It's his first writing credit for the show, actually.
And the structure is incredibly unique.
It's based on La Ronde, a famous play. It's a narrative circle. It's the middle of a brutal Korean winter. Everyone is freezing, and Hawkeye gets a pair of thermal long johns from his dad.
Which are basically solid gold in Korea in January.
Exactly. But he gives them to Trapper, who is sick. Then Trapper loses them to Radar in a poker game. Radar trades them to the cook for a real lamb dinner. The cook uses them to bribe Frank. Frank gives them to Margaret to prove his love.
And then Klinger gets involved.
Klinger steals them from Margaret's tent, gives them to Father Mulcahy. Mulcahy gives them to Henry. And eventually, after this long, crazy journey through the entire camp, they make their way right back to Hawkeye.
It's a brilliant way to showcase the entire ensemble cast in one episode.
It is. It shows the desperate, petty bargaining that happens in the camp just to survive the elements. It shows what everyone values. For Radar, it's food. For Frank, it's Margaret. For Klinger, it's a bribe. It's a great character study disguised as a farce.
It really highlights the swamp dynamics and the constant pranks. We talked about the ring banger, but the pranks in season 1 are just nonstop.
They're survival mechanisms. Take bananas, crackers, and nuts. Episode 7. Hawkeye wants R and R. He is denied. So what does he do?
He fakes insanity.
But he really commits to the bit. He eats raw liver in the mess tent while wearing full surgical garb.
I've eaten a river of liver and an ocean of fish. That line is permanently stuck in my head.
And when a psychiatrist comes to evaluate him, played by Stuart Margolin, Hawkeye spins this elaborate, insane tale about being deeply in love with Frank. It's pure manic energy.
And then there's Major Fred C. Dobbs, episode 22.
This one is interesting from a production standpoint. Alda has actually cited this as a low point episode, in his opinion.
Really? Why is that?
The premise is a bit silly, even for them. Frank wants a transfer. Hawkeye and Trapper want him gone, but then they realize if he leaves, they'd have to work double shifts in surgery. So they have to trick him into staying.
So they create a fake gold rush.
Yes. Major Fred C. Dobbs is a reference to the movie The Treasure of the Sierra Madre. They trick Frank into thinking there's gold in the hills near the camp, so his sheer greed will keep him at the 4077th.
It does sound a bit cartoony compared to the rest.
It is. It leans a little too hard on the Frank is an idiot button. But then you have Yankee Doodle Doctor episode 6, which feels very much on brand.
This is the filmmaking episode.
Right. A filmmaker comes to the camp to make a documentary about MASH units. But he wants a pure propaganda film. He wants it sanitized, heroic, clean.
And Hawkeye isn't having any of that.
No. He literally destroys the film negative. And then they make their own version. It's a complete Marx Brothers parody. Hawkeye is Groucho, Trapper is Harpo. They turn the war into a ridiculous circus.
Featuring Radar as the patient.
It's anarchic, it's rebellious, and it speaks to that core theme of the early seasons. The only way to stay sane in an insane war is to act crazier than the war itself. By mocking the propaganda, they are actually telling the truth about the war.
That's a really great way to put it. Now, we've covered the characters, the tone, the pranks, but season 1 also played with the format of television itself. We mentioned the Long John flap, but the Dear Dad episodes are huge format breakers.
Dear Dad and Dear Dad. Again, these episodes completely break the traditional narrative structure of a sitcom. Usually you have an A plot and a B plot. These episodes are just a series of short vignettes tied together by Hawkeye's narration as he writes a letter home to his father.
It allows them to tell smaller stories that wouldn't necessarily fill a whole episode on their own.
Exactly. It makes the show feel much more intimate. You are inside Hawkeye's head.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a famous continuity error in Dear Dad. Again.
Oh, do tell. I love a good continuity error.
In the letter, Hawkeye sends love to his sister and mom.
Wait, Hawkeye's an only child, and his mom died when he was a kid. That's a huge part of his character later on. He talks about it constantly in later seasons.
Later on, yes.
Yeah.
But in season 1, the writers hadn't decided any of that yet. So he has a living mom and a sister. It's one of those things you just have to hand wave away as early installment weirdness.
That is wild. I guess they just hadn't built the sad Hawkeye backstory yet.
Not yet. They were still figuring out who these people were.
Yeah.
Then you have the Army-Navy game.
Oh, that's a tense one.
Yes. An unexploded bomb lands right in the middle of the compound. The whole camp is terrified. They have to defuse it. And when they finally pop it open, it doesn't explode. It just shoots out enemy propaganda leaflets.
Talk about anticlimactic in the best way.
And throughout the episode, they keep checking the radio for the fictional score of the big game. Navy 42, Army 36.
And didn't they use a jazzier theme song arrangement for that one?
They did. It really gave it a different flavor. Which brings us to the finale. Or, well, the last episode of the season. Showtime.
Episode 24.
It also uses that nonlinear structure, very similar to Dear Dad. A USO troop is visiting the camp, so the episode is intercut with performances, singers, comedians, cap dancers, specifically Jackie Flash and the Miller sisters.
It constantly juxtaposes the entertainment on the stage with the surgery in the OR.
Which is a very classic MASH technique. The glitz of the show versus the gore of the meatball surgery.
Oh.
But there are two really key moments here. First, Henry Blake's wife gives birth back home.
And Henry is stuck in Korea.
He's devastated. He can't be there. He's pacing. He's upset. So Radar does something incredibly sweet. He arranges for a local Korean mother in the camp to let Henry hold her baby.
Oh, that's beautiful.
It is. It's a quiet moment of bonding between Henry and Radar. It shows Henry's softer, fatherly side. It reminds us that these men have real families they're missing desperately.
And the second key moment.
A musical note? There's a drum solo during the USO show.
Yeah.
The drummer gets sick or something, and Radar just jumps in.
Radar can shred on the drums.
Gary Berghoff was actually a highly skilled jazz drummer in real life. They explicitly wrote it in to let him show off his chops. It's a great high-energy way to cap off the season.
So we've gone through 24 episodes. We've seen the desk theft, the fake captain, the tragic death of a friend, the introduction of Klinger in a dress. When you look at season 1 as a whole package, what is the legacy here for the listeners?
The legacy is that it established the blueprint. It proved you could do high-concept farce like Tuttle and jarring tragedy like sometimes you hear the bullet in the exact same half-hour television slot.
It wasn't just Hogan's Heroes or McHale's Navy.
No, it had real teeth. Even in season 1, with the laugh track and the occasional outdated humor, the anti-war message was pulsing underneath everything. It moved from sexual humor in the early episodes to sharp social commentary by the end. It completely set the stage for an 11-season run that would eventually become the most watched scripted television event in history.
And it gave us Henry Blake. I want to end on him, because looking back at season 1, he's such a fascinating figure to analyze.
He is. And here's a provocative thought for the listeners to take away and mull over. Think about the evolution of Henry Blake. In the early episodes, like The Ringbanger, he's portrayed almost entirely as a buffoon. He's incompetent. He's easily manipulated by Hawkeye and Trapper.
He's the guy getting his antique desk stolen right out from under him.
Exactly. But then look at that's how they shear there. Sometimes you hear the bullet. He's the one giving Hawkeye the profound wisdom to survive the grief. He becomes the wise mentor.
So the question is, how does our perception of the war change depending on Henry's characterization?
Right. When the leadership is incompetent, the war is a farce. It's a joke. But when the leadership is compassionate, when Henry is the father figure carrying the weight of the casualties, the war becomes a tragedy. It becomes a place where good people are trapped in a terribly bad situation. Season 1, Henry Blake straddles that line perfectly.
That is a great point for everyone to consider. He's the anchor that lets the show swing between comedy and drama.
He really is.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive. I feel like I need to go rewatch Tuttle right now.
Just don't forget your parachute.
Rule number 1. Thanks for listening, everyone. This has been the deep dive on MASH Season 1. We will see you next time.